listening, and it can us to kind of have this information in the future. I am going to make sure that I turn off my sounds when people come in. Otherwise, you guys are going to hear that echo. So with that being said, let me go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for those who are putting their information. Like I mentioned, I love hearing about the audience that I'm working with tonight. It just kind of gives me an insight of where we are. What is super cool is that as I get to see from the different things in the chat is that we not only have many people from different areas, so it kind of leads me into some of my rules that I love going over. So tonight's presentation is about creating positive relationships with classroom staff. And although I am saying classroom staff, in overall, the information is meant to be for absolutely everyone who you work with. So whether it is a classroom teacher or like we mentioned, those other related service providers. So it is amazing to see that we do have an RBT right now. We also have a BCBA joining us. So trying to bridge those gaps on how to work with one another. It is amazing to see that everybody's joining in so we can kind of get that. So to get started, we always kind of like setting some rules, just like we do for our students. And really, Alicia and I are more than anything about mindset. So all we ask you guys for tonight is that you're open to new thoughts and ideas that we share, and that you get out what you put into this, right? So when we are starting to get all this information, we're going to ask you guys to just either have a notebook next to you, write down some ideas, write down some notes, and take this in. We may not always feel like everything that we're going to share tonight might apply to you, but I promise you, after working in the sixth largest district in South Florida, I have learned to navigate dealing with a lot of adults. And I'll get to tell you a little bit about myself and who I am. So we do have Alicia, who is my partner in crime. She was not able to join us video, but she is joining us through the chat. So hopefully you'll get to know a little bit about her. She is also working with me alongside in the sixth largest district as a behavior program specialist, and we have known each other for a while. Both of our passion truly is working with our special education children in many realms. So we do want to share that with you. Now, as far as who I am, my name is Natalia Moron. I am originally a graduate of social work, and I just recently graduated with my master's in education. But in my experience, I have worked in many different areas as far as special education. So combined together, we have over 21 plus years in special education. I have been a support facilitator, a classroom assistant, a self-contained classroom teacher K through 5 for students with autism. I was also an autism coach, or also known as an autism specialist, and now I work as a curriculum program specialist for my district. So I get to support a lot of different schools and all types of disabilities. So for me, it is always about networking and creating relationships with all the people I work with, especially after overseeing more than 40 plus schools. I'm constantly doing presentations for our own district, aside from what we do privately, and we are always trying to find ways to how to get to know people, how to, work together, how to bridge those gaps so we can maximize the learning for our students. So hopefully you'll be thrilled to join us. We do want to tell you guys a little bit about ourselves. So our company offers a lot of things. We always love to do freebies for everybody so we can learn together, educate you, empower you, and inspire you. We have decided to embark this year in a very cool journey. We are making mini courses. We have a whole series for teachers and staff, and we're also going to be doing one for the parents. So if you do want to learn a little bit more about what that series is going to look like, you can just get your phone out and scan the QR code, and you will be able to get some information about how that works. We are doing this because we just love sharing our knowledge. One of the things that we have learned is that we can never, we're always going to be learning something new, right? So there's always something that we can learn from each other, just like I learned from you guys. There's always things that are going to connect us, things that are going to unite us, and then we're going to share this knowledge to hopefully make learning for our students the best that it could be for them. And if you want to know a little bit more, we do offer a ton of other services for our schools and districts, even for school staff, if you want to work in just embarking a little bit more and just learning, we consult, we problem solve, we have done coaching and collaborating with schools, administrators. We do a lot of visual support creations as well. We have helped many teachers with classroom structures. We provide training on numerous topics, sometimes even personalized topics, depending what your needs are. And if needed, we do offer manuals and guides for different scenarios and how to handle certain situations. So we do ask you guys, again, if you want a little bit more information, you could always go to our website, which you're going to find in all of our slides at the bottom of each of the presentation, or you can just, again, take out your phone and scan that QR code to learn a little more. So let's start. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what is it when we are working. One of the things that I have learned is that we spend so much of our lives at work. And Alicia did a great way. We are very visually driven individuals. So we love to provide visuals for you guys. So we wanted to do a small analysis and give you some data, because we like our data, of what does that look like? How many hours do we really spend at work? So if you had 7.5 hours in a day, times 5, that is 35.5, 37.5 in a week. And that is a total of 150 hours in a month. So when you start measuring how long you're spending at work, that is quite some time, right? We spend a lot of time there. We are always trying to make sure that those experiences and the amount of hours we spend with those people are going to be pleasurable, regardless of the challenges we face, okay? So our goal really is to try to make it a little bit more enjoyable. And the biggest thing is that we've learned that when we do teamwork, that means we divide the task, it's only going to result in multiplying the success of the classroom, of whatever you're trying to achieve, whether it's a classroom, whether it's dealing with a student, whether it's trying to achieve a goal overall to make success for our students. So I want you to just take a quick moment and think about what makes your work atmosphere more enjoyable. Or maybe you can, identify what makes it a little bit miserable. So I'm going to give you 1 minute to go ahead and think about that. So what is enjoyable, or what really makes it miserable at work? And go ahead and add that into the chat real quick. So again, I just kind of want to know where your environment status is, and that's what we're going to call it right now. And Alicia's going to be joining us, so she's going to be my chat monitor, as we like to call them. Okay, so brainstorming and creating with others, seeing the progress of our students. Okay. My coworkers make it enjoyable, and whenever my kiddos are having a good day, absolutely. What makes it enjoyable is working together with coworkers and helping each other with teamwork. Butting heads with adults in the classroom, we're all opinionated. Absolutely, right? We all have opinions. And how do we get those opinions and strengths and weaknesses to maximize our work environments, right? Communicating and sharing success. Nothing makes it miserable. Man, I really want to go work with you, Alexandra. Okay. I love that attitude. You're right. There's going to be tough days, right? And like I said, we spend a lot of hours with these people, and sometimes it's not always easy, right? And I think especially if you're working in special education world, there's a lot of revolving doors. And I've learned that from a district level, from a support staff, from an in-school guide and coach and mentor, that there's going to be a lot of changes sometimes. So just adapting it, dealing with the changes for our students and all the things that are happening around the world, right? So because we spend so many hours here, we do want to be able to think of the environments that we're going into, right? What makes it feel welcoming? So let's think about this for a moment. Think about the environment, right? Think about the people that you work with. Think about, what do you say to them? What makes you feel, does it make you feel good to be there? Do they feel unwelcome? Is the environment something that they want to go into, or is it something that makes them want to turn away? And Alicia I love it because she really does like Bath and Beyond, or Bath and Body Works. So she's like, think of the amenities, like what can you have in the school setting? I know that working for the district is very different. It's more of a loner. And I feel like you build a bigger family when you work directly in a school setting. So I'm always missing that aspect of working. I call it my work family, right? But how do you build that? How do you make that environment? There are times where you will go to places where you feel that vibe where things are not as welcoming. So as you go into these environments, we want to start thinking about these things. Like think of the people that are there. What are we putting in place? What are the things that make you want to come into that place and be part of that family, as I like to call? So sometimes you won't find it, right? Sometimes it's going to be up to us. And our environments are definitely going to be a little bit different, and maybe they're not always as welcoming. So it's up to us to create that work atmosphere that is going to be a pleasant place. Okay. So we can create the space by making it warm, by making it welcoming. And sometimes, and I'm going to kind of go back to the butting heads comment, is that sometimes we can respect that even if we all disagree, we're here for one purpose, right? And that is my biggest thing, is that I remind everybody, I said, what is our purpose? Our purpose is here to be here for our students, to work cohesively, collaboratively for one goal, and that is to maximize students' learning, to achieve student success. And I think the biggest thing is finding the time. I know that we barely have time to go to the restrooms, especially if you're a classroom teacher or you're working in the special, world. It is very difficult, but we have to find the time to share the ideas and collaborate. So in going back to that thought, and I'm going to bring it because I have been there, I have butted heads with many, many people, and I have agreed to disagreed in many circumstances. But we had to have a meeting, because sometimes when we talk these things out, we can also come to a compromise and meet halfway to say, well, what do you think can be done? What do I think can be done? How can we combine those things, or how can we trial some of these things to make it work? Okay. But I had to make that effort to actually find the time to share and collaborate these ideas. All right. So the other thing that I have is we have to realize that a life worth living is one that includes relationships. Okay. And work relationships are part of it. It is truly the bottom line. We have to get to know the people that you spend together with. And if you work in a school setting or in a special needs world, there's a lot of team members involved, right? And if you look at our screen, there's just a few, right, who are in it. But I want to say these is pretty much a whole bunch of people that are going to have to work together for one child. And in a classroom, it's going to be multiple children, right? So it could be your speech program pathologist, it could be district support staff, it could be the teacher, whether it's a self-contained teacher, a pre-K teacher, a resource teacher, a general education teacher. We're going to have family members, right? We're going to have physical therapists, occupational therapists. Sometimes you're going to be co-teachers. Sometimes it's going to be your admin and your support staff, such as your coaches within your school. And of course, and not least, it is our classroom assistants, our classroom aides that are going to support you through this process. So we have to take time to think of who your team is and how can we make it a little bit better to create those relationships with them. The biggest thing I've learned is that we won't always automatically mesh with people. It doesn't always come naturally. There are people in this world, and I think Alicia and I that's how kind of we were. We just bonded automatically. It was there. The chemistry was there. But there are times that you're going to encounter different adults that it's not there. So you have to find it. You have to look for it. You have to establish it. You have to create it. Create that bond, especially if you're going to be spending so much time together with these individuals. And you have to work with them all together, right? So how can we bring those strategies in to make that cohesive, and positive relationship between each other for that one common goal? Okay, so let's think about this for a moment. Oh, wait, my screen, there we go. So just like with any relationship, if you want it to grow, you have to nurture it, okay? The grass is only greener where you water it. And yes, it's going to take time and it's going to take effort to grow a garden, but it is so worth it. Okay. And remember that once you have the flowers, they don't last forever unless you keep tending to them. So I am obsessed with orchids, and I'm sorry if you're not a gardening person, but I'll tell you a short story. I love orchids, but when I decided to embark in my journey of really dedicating myself to this company and having my full-time job and being a mom, I also decided to do my master's online. And in my plans, I told you I love orchids. They were falling apart, but I was so upset that they were not blooming on me. And it's just like Alicia says, you have to take care of it. You have to nurture it. The moment I restarted watering them and making sure I clean them out, there they went again, giving me beautiful orchid blooms. But I was kind of like leaving them to the side, and not really spending some time giving them some TLC. So this is just with anything in life. Same thing with the students, same thing with the adults you work with. Sometimes we just have to, again, nurture it to make sure that it grows and it keeps bonding. So there's many ways that we're going to create relationships. So Alicia and I wanted to take some time to give you some tips. And this is just the snapshot of it, but we're actually going to go over these different topics as to how exactly this is. Okay. So the first one is to get to know your team. Okay. How do you get to know them? Well, find out their why. Learn about them. Ask them about their family, their friends. Do they have children? Are they, do they have a spouse? Where are they from? What do they do? What is their favorite treats? Okay, and snacks. By the way, guys, this was my favorite. So when I first moved, I worked for a school for a really long time as a self-contained classroom teacher. I was there 10 years. And I decided I wanted to change. I had just moved to a whole different city in my own district. And I said, you know what? I'm going to take a new job. I'm going to move closer to home. And when I moved to this school, it was just such a different environment. Like, I felt so out of place. I felt like I did not belong. And here I was, and I was going to be the autism coach who was going to guide, coach, and mentor 6 classrooms, over 27 assistants, and nobody liked each other. Like, they had no respect for the person who had this role before. But here I was trying to build these gaps and bridge them and trying to make relationships. So the first thing I did when I walked in, I said, my door is always open and I need you to fill out this brief survey. And it was the simplest survey. All it was, I think, 3 questions. It was, when is your birthday? What is your name? And what is your favorite treat? Like your favorite candy, your favorite snack. And every time I made it my mission. Mind you, I had over like 30-ish people, but I wanted to make it my mission that I would take the time to just get to know them a little bit and give them what they like. So whenever it was their birthday, I would make sure that in their mailbox, the first thing, I was always early, the first thing that I did was put that favorite treat in their mailbox and say, have a wonderful day, Miss M. Can I tell you how many people would walk back to my office and said, nobody had ever done that? Mind you, it wasn't expensive. It was really minimal what I had to spend, although it was a few people. But it was the thought that counted. It was the thought that I took the time to get them what they like, took the time to make it my mission to acknowledge them and appreciate them with just a tiny little brief thing. So those treats went a very long way, knowing when their birthday was, I must tell you, okay? So again, talk to them, get to know them. What are their hobbies? What are their interests? Know them professionally too. It's very important to find out how long they've been working with special needs children, or if they've ever done it before. Okay, what else have they done professionally? Were they ever like doing another job? How long have they been at that school, or maybe another school? Maybe they've never been in the education system. And sometimes, believe it or not, ask them about their favorite student in the classroom. I know we never admit it, but deep down, we always have one. Or what is their challenging children? Sometimes the students in the classroom, sometimes we just have a harder time with some kids than others. You need to know these things. What is their favorite part of the day? What is their the most difficult part of the day? And what experiences help them get to where they are? The more you know about that individual person, the more you can use their strengths and weaknesses to maximize for your classroom. So let me explain to you what happened. So I had an assistant who, by the way, my assistants I adore. I no longer work with them, but they are like my other half. They were my right and left hand side. And one of them, nobody liked working with her. And I couldn't figure out why. And it's just, she was very opinionated. We would butt heads at the beginning too. But I learned like I had to maximize her strengths. So she used to work for the corporate world and she was a secretary. And she was phenomenal in fighting and organizing all my materials. I mean, if I needed stuff filed, that was her job. If I needed my schedules done, she had them done. If I needed organization and cleaning my entire room, making sure everything was put back in order, that was her role, but that was her strength, right? Then I had another one who she was super creative. And she was just the artist. She loved making activities. She would put me to work a lot because she would always tell me, I have an idea, Ms. M. And I was like, great. What are we doing today or this week? Or what project is it? But that was the thing. I used their strengths to maximize. So I knew, hey, if one of my assistants, Olga, she loved fighting, that was her thing. Okay. I would make sure that that was her strength. That was based on her experience. We're going to highlight those skills. And sometimes that's why it's so important to get to know them, because the more you get to know them, you start connecting. You may not get along with that person, but hey, if you all of a sudden find that your favorite hobby matches, let's say that she loves reading books, you love reading books, that's a topic of interest that you guys can connect with. And that's how relationships really start. It's finding that thing that connects you guys and expanding from them. And one of the biggest things that I learned is the more I built relationships, the more I got out of people. So going back to the school that I told you, I became a coach. I was so out of that place. I felt so unwelcome. The environment wasn't welcoming. So I started making my office more and more welcoming. It was always open. I had treats for everyone, whoever needed a moment. I said, come to my office. You can have a seat here. And then I also started just trying to get to know them personally. What do you guys need? How can I help? And, they would come to me and say, nobody ever asked us that. And I said, okay, well, let me see what I can do. It didn't mean that I would always have an answer or that I could always do something, but when I could, I would try to advocate for them and get it done. And guess what? They started doing things for me that nobody got them to do before. I had people taking work home. I had people doing above and beyond what they needed to do just because we started building that relationship. So again, it is incredibly crucial to get to know your team. You cannot expect people to really work and have that rapport with them if you can't connect with them, if you can't build a relationship and kind of nourish that and nurture that. Okay, so this is just one of the starting points. The next thing is to create a space. Okay, designate an area, whether it's a desk, a table, or even a corner for all the staff in your classroom or who you work with, to make sure that they feel like they belong. Provide a storage spot. So I'm not gonna lie, I was really bad about in my classroom. I was a self-contained classroom teacher. I never gave a desk to my assistants. Some teachers did, and they would scream at me for not doing it for my assistants, but I didn't even use my own desk. So I said, I'm not gonna add another piece of furniture that is not gonna be useful. So they had the option to sit at my desk, but what I did make sure is they did have a drawer that was just for each one of them. I did have rotating adults, so I did make sure that they had a spot where they can put their belongings. That was theirs. We had an area in the cabinet where they can bring their snacks, a space in my refrigerator, whatever they needed. I wanted to make sure I meet them halfway. Offer materials and resources. Okay, show them around the classroom so they don't feel like a visitor. So one of the biggest things as I work with different schools is that they're like, well, she doesn't know what to do. And my first question is, well, did you tell her what you wanted her to do? She's like, well, no. And I said, well, how do you know she knows what she needs to do? Sometimes we think they just know. And sometimes the reality is they might not. They might want to, but they just maybe didn't come from that world, because if we didn't figure out their background, maybe they were never in these type of classrooms. Maybe they've never worked with these kids. Maybe they've never been trained. Maybe they got switched from a teacher, or maybe they're outsiders like our RBTs who come in and they don't know your world. Okay, so you are essentially a visitor. They're visitors in your world. You know it, but they might not. So it is very important to really explain your classroom, explain the centers and the expectations. So my husband will scream at me sometimes and say, I don't know what you're trying to say. But in my mind, when I'm having this conversation, he's like, you're having a conversation by yourself. He's like, you know what you're trying to say, but I don't. So I always have to recall myself and say, oh yeah, I have to go back and explain the whole situation, because I knew where I was going with it, but he didn't. And it's the same thing with the staff I work with, right? We talked a little bit about this, but I will re-highlight again, is to create time to collaborate and listen. So working in the self-contained classroom, I realized that, as a teacher, I had the times in my schedule where I had my planning time, I had my lunch time, and I had, after school hours. But sometimes my assistant spent more time with kids in different settings that I wasn't there. So I had to make it my mission to sit with them and collaborate and ask them, how is Johnny in the cafeteria? What do they do? And get their input as well. Or sometimes I would write my IEPs, which is you had to complete your present levels of performance, and ask my assistants or people who I work with, my assistants, my therapist, my speech, my OT, anybody who would work with this child, and ask them, look what I wrote. Do you see anything different? Do I need to add? Do you get a different perspective from that child when you work with them? Because they have different perspectives and inputs they could give, but their input is valuable too. And when you start listening and collaborating, you will be surprised the magic that happens the more you do this. So sometimes, I wouldn't always agree, but I would run with it and I would tell my assistants, okay, they're like, we don't think this is going to work. And I would ask them, well, what would work? And we would try it their way. To be fair, sometimes it did. And when it didn't, we would say, okay, great, it didn't work. So now let's try a different way. But I never just shot down their ideas without either explaining why or without trying it out. Okay, so don't knock it till you try it. You would be surprised sometimes when we put everybody's brain together, the magic that happens because we see it from different perspectives. And that is the thing when it comes to, the end of everything is that we need to communicate. All right. And we need to believe that all that comes from a positive mindset, intent, even if it's disagreements, if we're doing it with positivity and with a good goal in the end, we can get a lot of it. So you don't want to get the feeling that you're discarding everybody's input. You want to see how we can utilize it, even if it's not at that current time. Okay. Then understanding roles and responsibilities. So staff need to understand their roles and responsibilities. We mentioned it a little bit before, where we automatically think they know. And I have learned that we don't always know. For my related service providers, such as your SLPs, your RBTs, your OTs, anybody who comes from the outside into your classroom, they don't even know where they're going in your classroom sometimes. They don't know if they need to sit in a corner, if you want them to join in. So this is where communication comes in, and it's going to be very important. Where are they going to work with students? In the classroom, in a different location? How and when will you collaborate? It's not just about having people come in and out, kind of like an airport, right? Where we all just transition through it. It's actually stopping at one point and saying, hey, what's going on? What are you working on? Have you seen any difficulties? Have you seen any challenges? Are there any, strength? Is the child progressing? What are some of the highlights? Okay, what are some of the wins? And start learning those things. What are you doing that I can do in my classroom? So to me as a teacher, it was vital to communicate with these related service providers. Number one, because I spend the majority of the time with these students, I learned that some of those strategies that they apply for that small period of block of time that they see these children, I can bring into my classroom and make that more consistent. So yes, it is their role to teach fine motor skills. And yes, they're working on speech. And yes, we're molding behavior. But at the end of the day, I am that ESC teacher that's supposed to cover all those things as well. So in order to maximize that learning, I wanted to pick on their brains. I would always be working with my speech, whoever came in, and saying, what are you doing? Look what I learned. This worked for me. Did you try this out? And we kind of put our brains together. Sometimes, again, we would agree to disagree, and that's okay too. That is part of relationships, okay? But we always want to make sure we have that moment. Sometimes it was share and delegate, okay? And by sharing and delegated, I love how Alicia put it. We schedule and we make it happen. I used to make checklists. I used to call it the end of the day checklist, the morning checklist. I had a checklist for everything. I still do. Checklists, sticky notes, those are my favorite. And sometimes even schedules. So create a checklist, add a zone schedule to share the responsibilities in the classroom. The more you explain and have a visual guide, the better. It is clear, it is written in stone. It is very important because when a classroom is in full time preparing centers, materials, all the expectations we have to do, it can become a lot. So this is where you have to share and delegate. Some teachers feel like we have to encompass it all and do it all. But if we work together, we achieve more. And there is no I in teamwork. Okay, Remember how I highlighted those skills of my assistants? I got to know them and I learned their strengths, and we kind of divided and conquer. And again, I'm going to keep calling it magic because that's truly how I felt. The more we divided and conquer, the more that gets achieved, the better it is. But again, I couldn't just come in and say, you need to do all of this without having some relationship, without having some expectation, without creating a respect level. To me, my assistants were not just my assistants, they were my right hand and left hand side. I could not do anything without them, and I could not do anything without my related service providers either. They gave me input and expertise in areas that I was not knowledgeable on. I needed their brains to pick on them and to keep maximizing that learning for the students. So the more we work together, understand everybody's roles and responsibilities, have clear expectations, the better. Schedules were amazing. I told you at the end of the day, I had a checklist, and I would tell my ladies, sometimes I would delegate which ones they would do. Sometimes it was a rough day, and my goal was just, we need to get it done. Let's just tackle one thing in the checklist at a time. And as soon as it's done, we're good, right? You can do that too. Divide and conquer. So we talked a little bit about collaborating and sharing. So we love, and I say it because I've lived it and I can honestly attest to this. Share your tips and tricks, okay, in your domains. So whoever you are and whatever your role is, you start learning things that work for you with certain students. Why not share the wealth and share it with the rest? So I remember when I was really trying to mold behaviors and I was doing my behavior plans in my classroom, or when I was just teaching social skills. Whoever came in my classroom, I would tell them, listen, for Johnny, we're using the token board. This is how we're doing it. This is his reinforcer. So everybody can be consistent in the format that you're delivering these behavioral strategies, right? But imagine what it looks like if you don't share these successful tricks and things that you're trying to get to achieve. Then everybody's working on something different and you're confusing the student as well, right? Because think about it. If I am making a child work, 5 commands to get a reward, and then I have my speech person come in and immediately rewards the child, it kind of defeats the purpose. So again, working together with everybody. So everybody in my classroom knew that when I was trying to do certain specific skills that I was teaching my students, everybody who would walk in, I'd be like, oh, you can't talk to him when he does this. We're ignoring that behavior. And they knew the moment that they walked in. So, and when they were doing good, I would tell them, listen, if you do X, Y, and Z, he performs better. If you use a highlighter, if you use raised paper, if you use the letter blocks, if you use Play-Doh as a reinforcer, I would always share. So sharing is caring when it comes to student success, okay? And it can be on anything. It can be on academic, communication, behavior, fine motor, reinforcers, triggers, parent communication, okay, very important, share amongst the team. Collaborate together, whether it's for progress or challenges. Again, it's a village, not an island. So the more we work together, the more we get input, the better. If you go to trainings like today, share the things you learned. Or sometimes send your assistant or send anybody and say, hey, I went to this training. I found it really useful. Some of that information would really benefit, to expand your knowledge so you can see why I'm doing the things I'm doing. So every time when I was a first brand new teacher, and I did tell you guys I come from social work, so I am out of field. I'll gladly and proudly say it. I am not from the education field. So I had to learn everything when I came in through my actual experience and my work setting. I would always attend trainings first. And as soon as I was able to send my assistants, I made them go. At first they complained. They were like, why do I have to go? And I said, because I want you to do the same thing I'm doing and understand why I'm doing it. I want you to learn the same strategies I learned as to why it is successful for my students. So again, having that communication, you can't just expect people to just know that information. You have to make them understand the why, how to apply it, how to implement it. So again, sharing why it works or why or how to do it also helps. Flexibility. I feel like this is our new norm. When you're working with a team, you must be flexible and expect that it's not always going to go the way that you wanted it to go, because there's a lot of different things happening. There's a lot of experiences, a lot of perspectives and schedules, right? So things are going to be impacted. Maybe, you had everything set in stone and you woke up today, your car wouldn't turn on, then you had a flat tire, you spilled your coffee, and it threw your entire day off. You got to work late. You were not there to do your whole group. Your assistant got sick also. I mean, things happen. Sometimes I'm going to be like Alicia's emoji there in the middle that says, I'm flexible. Sometimes you're just going to have to roll with it. And when things don't go as expected, you're just going to have to be flexible. It is important to have routines and schedules, but sometimes things happen, okay? At the same time, you do have to be mindful, right? When you change something, how it's going to impact others, such as the schedules may change, locations may change, staff may change, and even lessons may change. So be mindful, because sometimes we automatically want to do all these changes. And I will say that I was guilty about this. I love switching my classroom structure to the point where my assistant was like, you're making me dizzy. What are you doing? And then I had to like talk it through and draw it out and explain it, because she was like, now you're throwing me off. And that's the same thing, right? So it will impact, certain things will impact. Sometimes when you change your schedule, it might impact others people's services. It might impact people's lunch schedule, their time, where they were bonding with others and making relationships with others. And that might throw them off, and now they're eating by themselves. So it seems minimal, but for some people, it's a big deal. If you work with students that have trouble with change, especially, right? Changing schedule or schedule changes such as fire drills or special activities, it's going to throw off their day. Even early release would throw off my students in my autism special program. So you have to be flexible, that things are not always going to go as expected. Okay, so that is one that is really big. And of course, we did talk about teamwork. Alicia and I feel like that's how we run it. She is working, she couldn't be here with us live, so she's working the chats. We take turns to get things done for you guys. We have learned that communication is key. We are constantly communicating with each other, and I did the same for everybody I work with. So create a comfortable and safe classroom. This is your home away from home. So use I statements and try not to put the other people on the defensive when communicating, right? So respecting others' perspectives and experiences and prior knowledge. So I, learned to do this. I feel this is, so it becomes a little bit right here. See, she's in the chat supporting me. I love it. Think of all the perspectives and experiences and prior knowledge. How do you kind of work together? The next one is to do weekly team building activities and meet and review the week. You may not be able to do it every week. I know our schedules are insane and crazy and all of that, but take at least 10 minutes. I know it seems like a lot, but everybody can spare 10 minutes at least once a week and say, hey guys, let's highlight our wins. What were our struggles? Okay, if you don't have the time, listen, make it even simpler. Every week, at the end of the week or during the week, we'll have sticky notes, we'll have a win board or losses board, and just have them rated. And then, you know what I mean? Spend 10 minutes talking about some of the things they wrote down. Doesn't have to be complicated. It could be super simple. But the more you build on that, the more it's going to get better. And last but not least is you do have to respect each other and work on creating your working relationship, building morale. Sometimes, even if you have that person who is not getting your perspective or what you expected them to do, but when they do something right, you're like, oh my God, thank you. That was amazing. That was great what you did with Johnny. Oh my God, you got him to do his job. Wow, he listened. Highlight those moments. Those small words go a long way. And if you don't want to have a conversation because it's a busy day, use sticky notes. I did say I love sticky notes. Get a sticky note and say, amazing job. Get them their favorite coffee treat. Get them their favorite drink. Buy them a meal every so often, right? And say, hey, just how's it going? It doesn't always have to be work related. If you're having a rough day, listen, don't worry. We'll skip your center. Let me see how we can move things around. Let me help you out today. Those small things build that teamwork, okay? So when I was having a rough day, and we all have them, guys, my parents knew if I was going through something rough, they took over my classroom, no questions asked. They just knew we went through our day, they didn't want to talk to anybody, wrapped up my day and went. If it happened vice versa to my other fellow team members, we did the same thing. And the more you do these little things, the more you build that morale and you collaborate together. Morale building. We talked a little bit about it. Many don't want to take the time to do this, right? But they are, overwhelmed with all the things. But you have to do this, because the more you do this, it creates a team atmosphere, and it takes away a little bit of everyone being on their own. So it could be work related if you're doing morale building, such as share professional development together, plan together, celebrate success. Remember how I talked about getting those sticky notes and just throughout the week, just writing our wins. Even if it's so small, a win is a win. Okay, it could be unrelated. So maybe you do, morale building, where you do this maybe outside. You do vision boards, you do arts and crafts together. There's like painting with a twist. There is building wood boards. There is just having a get together, doing some mindfulness workout, some yoga, celebrating birthdays. So that is one of my biggest things that I used to love to do, is I still do actually now with them, is for each other's birthday, we would go out, have dinner somewhere, and just talk about our lives. Sometimes about work, sometimes about funny things, sometimes about our family, and shared everything that was happening. And that's why I can say that to this day, these people are my right hand and left hand side, and I still talk about them despite me not working with them for the last 6 years. Actually, 7 years. But I still adore them. I still talk to them. And every time I just pick up my phone call and just talk to them, it's like I was still there and still working with them. So sometimes you want to do things that are unrelated. And even after hours, going for a drink, going for an appetizer, maybe just going to get your nails done, getting some self-care. It doesn't always have to be to that extent, but at least do the work related ones so you can work together and start building that work relationship at work. And we talked a little bit about it, just appreciation. Okay, a person who feels appreciated will always do more than what is expected. How does it feel when someone compliments you, right? How does it feel when somebody surprises you with that little surprise? How does it feel when your boss gives you kudos in a meeting or in a one-on-one conference? How does it feel when someone just says thank you? So reinforcement is for all, okay? You have to notice those little things. You have to give surprises, and you have to be generous with praise. I feel like we are so caught up with our craziness that we don't give enough, okay? So make sure that you provide enough praise and reinforcement to the staff you work with. Staff will know you appreciate them when you bring those little things and reinforce them. The more you reinforce, the more motivation they are, the greater output you would have. Like I told you guys, that one assistant, nobody wanted to work with her, and I had no problems with her. Like, she would do things for me that everybody's like, how do you get her to do that for you? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I just do. But we would have breakfast in the classroom sometimes. Like, we would make it, we would celebrate, whenever it was their birthday. I would bring their favorite meals. We would order out sometimes. Now, I'm not saying I did this every day, but you could do it every so often. They love to eat, I don't know, Chinese food. Then, hey, let's order your favorite meal for lunch. Let's have your favorite breakfast. Let's, have your favorite treat ready for them and say, hey, I just wanted to say thank you for everything you do. Small little details of appreciation make the world of a difference, okay? And be the light to help others find the way. Positivity is truly contagious, I promise you. And so is negativity. So which one do you want to radiate? Okay, do you want to be the one that sheds light or turns off the light? So our students deserve the best of us, and let's be the best we can be. So spread kindness and spread the joy, find the joy in the journey. I know that this job is not always, we don't always find the light, but there is always a light somewhere. So I think we have to start highlighting those small wins, even that they might feel like they're so tiny. In my mind, it's still a win. And that win leads to the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. So we have to highlight it. Establishing relationships do not just happen on their own, okay? It is definitely worth it. You need to find the time, okay? You need to remember that happiness is working with great people. And I love that I saw in some of those comments in the chat that there is that happiness, there is that worth of, working together with others, and coworkers can become family. I definitely have them. I have my work family. I have those who are my extended family after so many years and spending so much time together, so many ups and downs. So, again, they become your extended family members. And remember that coming together is a beginning, okay? Keeping together is the progress, and working together is truly the success. Okay, so I really do hope that today has been useful. It has educated you, it has empowered you, and inspired you to come back and apply some of these strategies to build these positive relationships. Not everything comes easy. Sometimes we have to work a little bit more and above and beyond. So we hope that it's been useful. We do want to say that we appreciate your time here. But before you go and we wrap everything up, I will turn on everybody's mics in case you want to make any comments, in case you want to add. But we're going to ask you, just as a help and support to us, if you can go ahead and pull out your phones and just scan the QR code on the screen and fill out the feedback survey, we would greatly appreciate it. We love hearing your input on our presentation. Hopefully you find it useful, you want to share it with others. So I'm going to leave this on for a little bit so you guys can do that while I go ahead and unmute everybody's microphone so we can share our thoughts if you guys want to bring that up or have a conversation about it. There we go. Oh, and I see we have different people now. I'm going to try to go back real quick. So I do thank Alicia for joining us via the Teams, just so she can help me out with that chat. I'm going to go back, make sure I didn't miss anybody. Communicating and sharing success. So for our BCBAs and RBTs, who I know are coming from the outside in, how do you feel like some of these strategies could apply to you, being the outsider coming into the education world or into any of these settings or home settings even? And I think you could unmute yourselves or you can type it in the chat, whichever one you prefer. Now I'm going to include in the chat our main websites, but it's super simple. It's www.autismelements.org. And if you want to learn about the different things, we have also a ton of resources online that you can check out, kind of learn and find out, just in case. Let me see if anybody, let me know if anybody is having trouble with the QR code, just in case, so I can see if I can put the link for you guys in the chat. Let me see if my computer wants to cooperate. We all know how technology could be. It sometimes could be a little special. I see collaboration is so important. Connecting with other adults that work with our kids can bring us closer to our learners. Absolutely. I think that is super key. Especially from the outsiders. I feel like I hear a lot from our school system that, when you guys come in, just having that network, what works for you guys, what, you know what I mean? What can they apply in the classroom? Let me add the link. Feedback survey. So for those of you who are maybe not able to get on the phone, I did put the form on the chat, so you guys can just press on that link. Sometimes there's so much going on, and the intention to share and the reality don't meet in the middle. Any strategies? Yes. There is so much going on. So what I always say, and I think that's the hardest part, is, even if it means those 10 minutes, even if it's 5 minutes. So whether it is after school that the kids leave is always preferable. Because when there's no kids, I feel like we can talk a little bit more freely and we can really see what's going on. Like we can get a better picture and talk openly. However, let's be real, just like you said, we don't always have that, right? Sometimes you're going to have to, like Alicia says, just schedule it. Even if it means scheduling it during, like, let's say the kids are in the break area, the kids are in the playground area, and let's say that you have 5 minutes and you can talk to maybe one of your assistants, or you can give their preferred item or preferred center if you really need to talk about that child and collaborate with someone. Sometimes you just have to make it happen. Our worlds are insane. I say we don't even have time to go to the restroom, barely even drink. If you have your coffee, maybe you buy it and you probably have it full at the end of the day. Same thing with your water. I was guilty about that. So sometimes it's really hard. We don't have the time. The days go by. but you have to make it your effort. It's kind of like I tell everybody, when you don't have your coffee in the morning, if you're a coffee drinker, right? You make the time. You make sure that the first thing you do in the morning is before you probably get ready, put that coffee pot on. It's the same thing. We have to make the effort. If you're trying to get healthier, you're going to start maybe doing more exercise, going to the gym, walking, doing something. You're going to make that effort. But it is up to us to do that like jumpstart and try to get it going. It's not going to be easy. And that's why Alicia, when she was preparing this presentation, she really did highlight maybe doing it once a week. We may not be able to do it once a week. We may be able to do it every other week. But make it your goal, and you have to prioritize it. So like I would do, let's say my, occupational therapist would come in twice a week. And I needed to touch base on these kids. So as soon as she would come in, we would give a reinforcer to that child so they would stay sitting. And I would say, hey, I just want to pick your brain on this real quick. I've been working on this with him. What do you think? What is your input? And even if it's in quick passing, still trying to get that information. If you have RBTs coming in, hey, I know that you're here. Have you seen any strategies that really work for you, even outside of the school? Can we bring it inside? What has been successful so we can keep trying it out throughout the entire day? Even if it's just in passing, but making it a priority. That's really the hard thing. I wish there was a simple answer, but it is true. Sometimes you want to do it and it's hard. So it's finding that tiny small time, and sometimes you may have to look at your schedule as a whole and be like, where can I fit in those 5 minutes, even if it's 5. I always say something is better than nothing, and if that's all you can give, then hey, that's all it is, but at least you're doing it. And again, we're building that relationship, we're kind of doing these things. I use my planning time, if you're getting to know, especially during my beginning of the school year, to really get to know and build those relationships with your staff, especially if they're new. So randomly, send surveys. I used to complete, if you use Google Forms, if you want to get to know your staff, you can do Google Forms online. You can just do a simple printout that says name, birthday, favorite places, and you can have them just handwrite it. I mean, it doesn't have to be even fancy for getting to know your staff. Sometimes maybe that's the only way you can communicate. Send the form out, have somebody fill it out, and then you kind of have a fill the information, and then you say, okay, can we discuss this that you wrote? So now you're meeting them halfway because maybe you don't have the time. There's many ways. It's just thinking outside the box and how to make it happen. But one of the things I've learned is being a special education teacher, I do feel that we have learned to make magic happen because we have to multitask all the time. So hopefully it gives you some ideas on how to tackle that. Any other questions, any other comments? Like I said, feel free to unmute if you want to.